My name is Olivia Carter. I am 29 years old from Austin, Texas. Have you ever been humiliated so badly that your entire identity was questioned in front of everyone you loved? What would you do if your own father, on the biggest night of his life, looked you in the eyes and said you were never his real daughter? Would you stay silent, or would you finally fight back? And what if, just when you felt completely shattered, the one person you trusted most stepped forward and revealed a truth so powerful? It destroyed everything your father tried to hide. Tonight, I'm going to tell you how one sentence changed my life forever and exposed a secret no one saw coming. It was supposed to be one of the proudest nights of my life. My dad had worked at the same company for over 35 years. Everyone respected him, everyone admired him, and I worshipped him. Growing up, I always told people my father was my hero, the kind of man who never gave up, who built everything from nothing. So when his retirement party was announced, I took it personally. I wanted it to be perfect, not just for him but for us. For weeks, I handled everything. I coordinated with the venue, picked out decorations, even helped prepare a surprise video with messages from his colleagues. I made sure his favorite songs were on the playlist. I even chose a dress he once said made me look elegant. I wanted him to look at me that night and feel proud, the way I had always felt about him. The venue was stunning. Soft golden lights, white table settings, a stage in the center with a microphone waiting for speeches. People filled the room quickly, coworkers, family, friends, distant relatives. Laughter echoed everywhere. You could feel the admiration in the air. This was his moment, and I was genuinely happy. I remember standing near the entrance for a moment, just watching him. He was smiling, shaking hands, receiving compliments. People were telling him how much he'd be missed, how incredible his career had been. And for a second, my chest filled with warmth. That's my dad, I thought. That's my father. When it was time for speeches, a few of his colleagues went first. They told stories about his dedication, his discipline, even his sense of humor. Everyone laughed. Then my mom spoke, short, emotional, a little shaky. She thanked him for everything he'd done for the family. I wasn't planning to speak. I just wanted to be there for him. But toward the end of the night, I felt this overwhelming urge. I wanted to hug him, to tell him how proud I was, not in a speech, but just as his daughter. So I walked toward him. Every step felt light at first. People were smiling at me as I passed. Some even nodded, like they knew what I was about to do. It felt like one of those movie moments where everything comes together perfectly. He was standing near the center, talking to a group of coworkers. I waited until there was a small pause, then stepped forward with a smile. "Dad," I said softly. He turned. For a split second, our eyes met, and something felt off. But before I could process it, I leaned in to hug him. That's when everything shattered. He shoved me, hard. I didn't even understand what had happened at first. My body just reacted. I stumbled backward, my heel caught on the edge of the carpet, and I fell. The impact hit my side and elbow first, sending a sharp pain through my arm. The sound of my fall echoed louder than anything else in the room. And then silence, complete silence, dozens of people staring, no music, no laughter, just eyes. I looked up at him from the floor, confused, embarrassed, my heart racing so fast I could barely breathe. "Dad," I whispered, but the man standing in front of me didn't look like my father. His face was cold, not angry, just empty, detached, like I was nothing to him. And then he said it, clear, loud, unshaking, "You're not my real daughter." The words didn't just land, they exploded. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. My ears started ringing. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard him, that maybe this was some kind of cruel joke, or I was dreaming. But no one laughed, no one moved, the room stayed frozen. Someone dropped a glass in the background, the sharp sound snapping through the silence, but still no one spoke. I stayed on the floor, staring up at him, waiting, hoping he would take it back, that he'd say something like, "I didn't mean that," or "I'm sorry." But he didn't. He just stood there, looking at me like I was a stranger. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Not just my pride, not just my heart, my identity. Because in front of everyone who had ever known me as his daughter, I had just been erased. And the worst part, the night I had spent weeks perfecting for him became the moment that destroyed me. I didn't leave the party right away. I don't even know why. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was denial, or maybe some part of me still believed there had to be an explanation. That what my dad said, what he did, couldn't possibly be real. But as I slowly got up from the floor, brushing my trembling hands against my dress, I felt something deeper than embarrassment settling into my chest. Clarity. Painful, sharp, undeniable clarity. Because suddenly, everything started making sense. All the moments I had ignored, all the questions I had buried, all the feelings I told myself weren't real. They came rushing back, one after another, like pieces of a puzzle I had been too afraid to solve. Growing up, I always felt different. Not in an obvious way, nothing I could point to and say, this is wrong. It was more subtle than that, quiet, like something just slightly out of place. My siblings never had to try to earn my dad's attention. It came naturally to them. He'd laugh with them, joke with them, praise them openly. But with me, it always felt like I was performing. Like I had to prove something just to get a fraction of that warmth. I remember bringing home straight A's once, holding my report card with so much excitement. My mom hugged me, proud, but my dad. He barely glanced at it. Good, he said, that was it. No smile, no pride, no I'm proud of you. At the time, I told myself he was just tired, that maybe he wasn't the expressive type. I made excuses for him over and over again. But now I saw it differently. There were birthdays where he seemed distant, like he was just going through the motions. Family dinners where he barely spoke to me unless it was necessary. Moments when I tried to sit next to him, only for him to subtly shift his attention elsewhere. And the worst part, I convinced myself it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough. Maybe I was just harder to love, so I tried harder. I became the perfect daughter, helpful, quiet. Achieving, I stayed out of trouble. I did everything I thought would make him finally look at me the way he looked at everyone else, but it never worked. There was always this invisible wall between us, one I could feel but never explain. And now, standing in that room with his words still echoing in my ears, "You're not my real daughter," that wall finally had a name. It wasn't distance. It wasn't personality. It was truth. A truth he had been carrying for years, while I lived in the dark. My mind started racing. If I wasn't his daughter, then whose was I? Did my mom know? How long had they known? Why didn't anyone tell me? And the most painful question of all, was I ever truly loved, or was I just tolerated? I looked around the room, and suddenly every face felt different. People weren't just watching anymore, they were whispering. Judging, pitying, I could see it in their eyes. She didn't know. All this time she didn't know. My chest tightened. Because they weren't just seeing a scene unfold. They were seeing my entire identity collapse in real time. I replayed his tone in my head, the way he said it. Not angry, not emotional, certain. That's what hurt the most. There was no hesitation in his voice, which meant this wasn't a secret that slipped out. This was something he had accepted long ago. Something he had lived with, while I unknowingly built my entire life around being his daughter. And then another realization hit me, one that made my stomach drop. Why now? Why would he choose this moment, this public, humiliating moment, to say it? After 29 years, why this night? That question lingered in my mind like a shadow, because this wasn't just about truth. This felt intentional, calculated, like there was something more beneath the surface, something bigger than just revealing a secret, something he wanted to accomplish by exposing me like that. And that thought, that's when the confusion started turning into something else, something darker. Because if this wasn't just about honesty, then it meant my father didn't just hide the truth from me. He waited for the perfect moment to destroy me with it. If my dad's words shattered me, my mother's silence finished the job. After he said it, after those cold, cutting words echoed through the room, I didn't look at anyone else. I looked at her. Because no matter what he said, no matter how cruel or shocking it was, my mom was supposed to be my safe place. The one person who would step in, correct him, defend me, protect me. She had to say something. She had to. My eyes locked onto hers, desperate, searching for any sign, confusion, anger, denial, anything that would tell me this wasn't real. But what I saw instead was fear, not shock, not outrage, fear. She stood there, frozen, her hands slightly trembling at her sides. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes didn't meet mine for more than a second before they dropped to the floor, and in that moment I felt it. That deep, sinking feeling in my chest, because silence can be louder than any truth. "Mom," I said, my voice breaking as I pushed myself up from the floor. "Tell me he's lying." It wasn't even a demand. It was a plea. I didn't care how ridiculous I looked. I didn't care about the people watching. I just needed her to say one thing, just one, to make this stop. But she didn't. She just stood there, quiet, still, avoiding me. And that's when the realization hit harder than anything my father had said. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a cruel joke. This was something she already knew. Something she had always known. I took a step toward her, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. "How long?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. "How long have you known?" She flinched. That tiny reaction, so small most people wouldn't even notice, told me everything. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not until she said it. Not until she confirmed what I was already starting to believe. "Mom, please," I whispered. "Just tell me the truth." For a second, I thought she might finally speak. Her shoulders lifted slightly, like she was gathering the courage. Her lips moved, but then she shook her head. Not in denial, in surrender. She started, her voice trembling. "I didn't want it to come out like this." That was it. That was the moment everything inside me collapsed. Not when my dad pushed me, not when he said I wasn't his daughter. But right then, when my mother admitted, without really saying the words, that this had been a secret, a lie, my entire life. "You didn't want it to come out," I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. "So you were just never going to tell me." Her eyes filled with tears now, but it was too late. Whatever sympathy I might have felt, it couldn't reach me anymore, because all I could think about was the years, the birthdays, the school events, the family dinners. The quiet moments when I trusted her completely, all those times I confided in her. All those times I asked her why Dad seemed distant, why things felt different, and she would smile, brush it off, tell me I was overthinking. She knew, the whole time she knew, and she chose silence. "I protected you," she said softly, almost defensively. The words hit me like a slap. "Protected me," I let out a hollow laugh. "From what? The truth? Or from realizing that my entire life was a lie?" A few people shifted uncomfortably around us, but I didn't care anymore. The room, the party, the audience, it all faded into the background. This wasn't about them. This was about the woman who raised me and the truth she kept buried. "I was going to tell you," she added quickly, as if trying to fix something that was already beyond repair. I didn't know how. I stared at her, searching her face for something, regret, love, guilt, anything that would make this easier to understand. But all I saw was someone who had made a choice to stay quiet, a choice to let me live in a reality that wasn't real. And suddenly, I felt more alone than I ever had in my entire life. Because it wasn't just that my father had rejected me, it was that my mother had let me believe I was loved the same way all along, and that betrayal. It cut deeper than anything he could have ever said, because at least his cruelty was honest, but her silence was a lie I had trusted for 29 years. By the time my mother finished speaking, I felt like I was standing on nothing. No ground, no stability, no sense of who I was anymore. The room was still watching, still whispering, but their voices had faded into a distant hum. My entire world had narrowed down to one painful realization. I didn't belong here, not to my father. Not to the truth I thought I knew, not even to the life I had been living. And just when I thought I couldn't feel more alone, I felt a hand gently wrap around mine. Warm, steady, familiar. I didn't even have to turn to know who it was. My husband, Ethan. He had been quiet the entire time, standing back, observing, letting everything unfold. And for a moment, I wondered why he hadn't stepped in earlier, why he hadn't defended me when my father humiliated me, when my mother stayed silent. But the second I looked into his eyes, I understood. He wasn't calm because he didn't care. He was calm because he knew something I didn't. "It's okay," he said softly, his thumb brushing over my trembling hand. "I'm here." And for the first time that night, I felt a tiny crack of stability beneath my feet. But what he did next changed everything. He stepped forward, not aggressively, not emotionally, calculated, controlled, the kind of calm that makes people listen whether they want to or not. "Sir," he said, addressing my father directly. The room shifted, people straightened, even the whispers stopped. Because there was something in Ethan's tone, something firm, unshakable, that demanded attention. My father looked at him, clearly irritated. "This is a family matter," he snapped. "Stay out of it." But Ethan didn't move, didn't react. If anything, his expression became even more focused. "With all due respect," he replied evenly, "you made it a public matter the moment you said that in front of everyone." A ripple of tension spread through the room. My father's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not like this. "Watch your tone," he warned, but Ethan didn't back down. Instead, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. And that's when I felt it again, that shift. That quiet, unsettling feeling that something bigger was about to unfold. He pulled out a folded document. At first, I didn't recognize it. It looked ordinary, just paper. But the way he held it, the way his eyes flicked between my father and my mother, told me it was anything but ordinary. "What is that?" my father asked sharply. Ethan unfolded it slowly, deliberately, like he wanted every second of tension to build. Then he looked straight at him and said something that made my heart stop. "If we're telling the truth tonight," he said calmly, "then let's tell all of it." The words hung in the air like a warning. My father's expression shifted, just slightly, but I caught it. For the first time that night, he looked unsure. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to me. And in that moment, everything else disappeared. "Olivia," he said gently, his voice softening just for me, "there's something I found a few weeks ago." I didn't want to believe it at first, and I didn't want to hurt you without being sure. My stomach dropped. What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated just for a second, not because he was unsure, but because he knew what this would do. Then he turned back to my parents, and whatever hesitation he had, it vanished. "I had a DNA test done," he said clearly. The room erupted into murmurs, but I couldn't hear any of it because my ears were ringing again, my thoughts spinning. A DNA test without telling me. Why would he? And then it hit me. He already knew. Before tonight, he already knew something was wrong. "I didn't plan for it to come out like this," he continued, his tone still controlled, still precise. "But after what you just did to her, I'm not staying silent anymore." My father took a step forward, anger flashing across his face. "You have no right." "Oh, I have every right," Ethan cut in, his voice sharper now but still calm. "Because she's my wife, and you don't get to destroy her with half the truth." Half the truth. Those 3 words echoed louder than anything else. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't just about whether I was his daughter. There was more, something deeper. Something darker. And for the first time that night, the man who had just shattered my identity looked like he was the one about to lose control. And I realized something I never expected to feel in that moment: hope. Because whatever Ethan was about to reveal, it wasn't just going to hurt. It was going to change everything. The moment Ethan said half the truth, the entire room shifted. It wasn't just tension anymore. It was anticipation. Because everyone could feel it, whatever was about to come next was bigger than what had already been revealed. And for the first time that night, my father looked nervous. Not angry, not in control. "Nervous? Say what you have to say," he snapped, trying to regain authority. "Let's get this over with." But his voice didn't carry the same weight anymore. Ethan didn't rush. He glanced at me once, just enough to steady me before turning back to him. "You're right about one thing," he said calmly. "She's not your biological daughter." The words still hurt, even now. But before that pain could settle in, he continued, "But what you didn't tell everyone is why." A silence fell so heavy it felt suffocating. My father's face tightened. "There's nothing else to tell." Ethan tilted his head slightly, almost like he expected that answer. "Really?" he said quietly. Then he lifted the document in his hand. "This DNA report doesn't just confirm that she's not your daughter," he said. "It confirms something else." My heart was pounding so loud I could barely think. What else could there be? What else could possibly make this worse? Ethan's voice cut through the silence again. "It shows that you can't have children." The room exploded, gasps, whispers. Shock rippling through every corner. But I didn't hear any of it, because all I could focus on was my father. The color drained from his face instantly. His confidence, his control, it all cracked in a single second. "That's a lie," he said quickly, too quickly. "That's not. It's not a lie," Ethan interrupted, still calm, still precise. "Medical records don't lie. Genetic markers don't lie. You've known this for years." My father's breathing grew heavier. "You don't know what you're talking about." But his voice was weaker now. Uncertain, and that's when everything started to click. I turned slowly toward my mother. Her face had completely changed. The fear was still there, but now there was something else. Guilt. Deep, undeniable guilt. "You knew," I whispered, my voice shaking. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head weakly. "I didn't want this, I didn't want it to come out like this," but it already had. And suddenly, the truth wasn't just painful, it was devastating. "He knew he couldn't have children," Ethan continued, his eyes locked on my father. "But instead of facing it, instead of being honest, he chose to pretend." Every word felt like another piece falling into place. "And when you were born," he added, glancing at me briefly, "he accepted it. Not because he believed you were his, but because it protected his image." A sharp, suffocating realization hit me. This was never about me, not really. This was about him, his pride, his reputation, his ego. "You let me grow up believing you were my father," I said, my voice breaking as I looked at him. "You let me spend my entire life trying to earn your love, knowing the truth the whole time." He didn't answer. He couldn't, because there was nothing left to say. "And tonight," Ethan pressed. "You didn't tell the truth because you suddenly felt honest. You did it because you wanted to humiliate her before anyone could question you." That was it. That was the final piece. This wasn't a confession. It was an attack, a calculated, cruel attempt to control the narrative before the real truth ever surfaced. "You were afraid," Ethan said quietly. "Afraid that one day this would come out and you'd lose everything." My father's hands clenched into fists, but he didn't deny it, because he couldn't. The truth had already done its damage. The room that once admired him now looked at him differently, not with respect, not with pride, but with judgment. And just like that, the man who tried to erase me was the one being exposed. I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not even sadness. Relief. For the first time in my life, I understood. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It wasn't that I was hard to love. It was that he was never capable of loving me the way I deserved. And that realization, it set me free. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Then I looked at him one last time, not as a daughter. Not as someone seeking approval, but as someone who finally saw the truth. "You didn't lose me tonight," I said quietly. "You lost the right to ever call yourself my father." And with that, I turned around, took Ethan's hand, and walked away, not broken, not ashamed, but free. If this story shook you, imagine living it. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed silent, or exposed the truth like I did? Backhand index pointing down, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you believe that no one deserves to be humiliated or lied to like this, hit that like button and subscribe for more real, emotional, and powerful stories that will stay with you long after the video ends. Because sometimes the truth doesn't just hurt, it sets you free. Fire.